Hi, this is Rob Drummond at True Story Selling. So I was telling you yesterday about one of my writers who has been meaning to make time to work on his own emails some more, and promised me that he would prepare a finished email in a week. So I said, no, don't do that because I'll probably pull it to bits. So prepare me a first draft. So this is so I want to talk through the steps that he went through, because the steps that he went through I think you'll find quite useful if you find the process of writing a complete email from start to finish quite intimidating. I think you'll find this quite helpful. So rather than just diving into the email, because what most people do is they just open Word and they start writing. It's actually better if you map out the story that you want to tell before you start writing. So he's created a quick timeline. He said what the story is. He has identified what his one idea is. So the one idea is going to link his story to his content. So I'll go over that in a minute. And he's got about 7 ups or downs. So he's got some context in the beginning, and then he's got about 7 ups or downs in the story. So an up is a good thing that happens, a bad is a down thing that happens. I would say that 7 is about the upper limit of what I think you should put in a marketing email. I think anything more than 7, and you're probably going to end up with a story that is quite long. The longer your story is, the harder it is to keep someone's attention, and the harder it is to keep the story focused on a particular thing. So I think 7 is kind of the upper limit. It does flash a few warning bells. If this was a more junior writer, I would probably try to cut this down a bit. But anyway, he's created his timeline. He's got about 7 ups or downs. He's got a mixture of ups and downs. So the thing that I look for here as well is, does the story have contrast? Does it have things that are up, things that are down? Boring stories do not have enough good things or bad things happen. So you need to check that there are good things happening, there are bad things happening. Otherwise, you end up with kind of a dry story. So if you think about most television adverts are only tell you the good things. And it's all wonderful, joy, sweetness, happiness, and it's not authentic, because we're like, well, where's the pain? Where's the hardship? So you have to have downs in your story as well. You have to have bad things that happen, because that's how real life works, and it's actually the downs that sort of get our attention a lot more. So David has then created from that a first draft. So the idea with the first draft is really an interim step between creating the timeline and having a finished email. So what you do with the first draft is each element on your timeline becomes its own paragraph, and you then color code the ups green and the downs red, just from a visual perspective at this point, to see, well, where are the ups, where are the downs? Because what we're going to do at this stage is we're going to ask, are the ups really up enough, and are the downs really down enough? So I'm not going to read all of this out to you. I'll let you read this in your own time. The point of the first draft is you're not writing out. So David has written in fairly complete sentences here, because he essentially knows what he's doing. But the idea with the first draft is that you take your timeline, and for each point on the timeline you create a single paragraph, and you write in very short sentences, where each of these sentences could effectively be a single bullet point. So you might start off, and for each point on the timeline, you could even just start off by listing a set of bullet points, and that becomes your starting point for creating the email, because then you're just writing. So essentially for each bullet point you're saying what happened and how you felt. Incidentally, how you felt is generally more powerful than what happened, but you have to start off by saying what happened, obviously. So my feedback to David was that I think this is mostly good. I think it needs a bit of sharpening. I think there's a little bit too much. So I think what David has fallen into the trap of here is because he obviously knows. So David did his PhD research process. His PhD research project following baboons in Nigeria. And obviously that is something he knows a lot about. And as a result of that, I think he's over-explained some parts of this. So for example, when you read through this email, David's got a down here. I'm always a little bit, it kind of goes against what I teach to have an up and a down in the same paragraph. Normally, I mean, I'm going to make a different suggestion here, but normally I would suggest moving them to separate paragraphs just to keep the ups and the downs clearly separate. But actually, when you read this carefully, I kind of think that this section here, it's not really a down. So David's color coded it red. I actually think it's kind of subject matter experts over explanation. So he obviously knows a lot about baboons and so on, and I just don't think this is necessary. So if we take this out, this is Rob's editing chainsaw coming into use. But if we take this out, what you'll see is that this paragraph here. So he's talking about how he was on a mission. He's talking about their vocalizations, their facial expressions, their body movements. Grunts are the most numerous of vocalizations, but baboons don't just grunt, they also bark. I quite like this because what this is so when you have words like but, this is a change in direction in the story. It's a change of pace, it's a change in direction. And this makes you wonder, okay, so what is going to come next? As a minor thing, I would also put this as a horizontal ellipsis. So where you have 3 dots in a row, it's like a continuation of thoughts. So they also bark, and it's like you started to say something, but you're going to continue it in the next paragraph. So it makes the reader want to read on. This isn't really so much like editing. I wouldn't normally make this suggestion editing the first draft, but it was something that came to mind. So one morning he was resting at the base of some trees. So he was saying for a long time it was magical. Suddenly several baboons barked. I heard a swoosh and saw a massive silhouette above the baboons. So my feeling when I read this was, this paragraph here was great up until here. And then he said the drama started and was over within seconds. Don't trivialise the drama. I think we want to enhance the drama and pull the drama out, not just say, oh yes, so this massive shadow appeared and then all these baboons crashed around. But it started and was over in seconds. It's a bit of an anticlimax, so let's just take that out. And he said a crowned eagle had just tried to pick off a juvenile baboon. I think that's okay, but I think we could say try to pick off isn't exactly a great verb. So maybe we could say a crowned eagle had just ambushed a juvenile baboon exposed above the tree canopy. This is also an option or a place to really delay the outcome of the story. So did the baboon survive? I think that's an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity here to really delay the outcome of the story a little bit. So then he transitions into his contents. So I also feel like there's a little bit of over-explanation going on here. So when I first read this, I felt that actually so where he's explaining the barking, I don't think he really needs to explain why the barking, is life or death. I think the most interesting thing about this story is that there was this ambush, and we weren't sure if a baboon was going to be gobbled up by an eagle, but the reason that they survived was clear communication, and clear communication is his link between story and content. So I think we can get rid of the over-explanation. And then actually what we can do is, so I also don't think he needs an audio clip. So I think we can create the reconnect here, signal danger through clear communication. So clear communication was his one idea, I think, to have a clear message near enough. Unfortunately, the message many small businesses are communicating through their websites is not clear to visitors. So I think that's a reasonable connection. So yeah, I mean, I haven't made wholesale changes here, but the points about the first draft was for me to see this before he got to the finished email, because he's put less work into this. We've really sharpened this up. We've identified that the real drama in the story is the ambush or the attack by the eagle. And yeah, I feel like we've got a framework for a good story here. I think we've sharpened up the story. We've removed a bit of the over explanation that tends to come when subject matter experts write marketing emails. But yeah, you know, I think as a framework, what he'll then do with this is he'll then create this into a second draft. So he'll expand out all of these. He'll convert all of these bullet point type sentences into proper sentences, and just tidy this up and move on to editing. If you'd like to do this sort of work and prepare this sort of email, and perhaps work with me on this, then you need to take a look at my Nurture Email Mastery course, a link for which is underneath this video.